I really appreciate all of you coming out and celebrating the Joyful Child Foundation and our first 10 years and the next 10 years. It's been quite a learning process since Samantha was taken, and it took a while for me to get to this point, but I have to tell you that the real satisfaction and joy that I get from this work is in the people that I work with every day. It's a funny thing, when you surround yourself with people who are dedicated to protecting children, they tend to be pretty awesome people. And so thank you for all being in the same room together, because it's really lovely to see you. So I wish that I could share with you. I wish you all could know Samantha. We showed some videos of her, but I can never really do her justice. She was even more beautiful than her pictures suggest, and thoughtful and caring and bright beyond measure. She loved learning. She had a fascination, most especially with science things like gravity and dinosaurs. She loved dinosaurs. She built those giant dinosaur puzzles. And pufferfish. Loved pufferfish. When she was 4, she begged me to start school early because she wanted to do homework with her new big sister. When she was 3, we had become a blended family, and her new baby brother was not yet 2. Her big sister was 7, and Samantha was really her little brother's cheerleader. She would encourage him constantly to try new things and be brave, and when he was in trouble, she would rush over to him and put her arm around him, as if in solidarity. And she just had this righteousness about her. She was tenacious and had a sense of justice. I used to joke that when she grew up, she was going to be a lawyer, because almost every day I would wake up and there would be a drawing for me or a note. And very often the note would have a list of questions and answers that I was supposed to circle. And then at the bottom it said, "Sign here." When she was taken, I went through some of her last notes, and there were a couple of notes. One was to Peter Pan, and one was to her little brother, and they said, "Be brave." And that really spoke to me. I had never heard her really say that just that way, and it became the motto for me personally, but it really became the motto for the Joyful Child Foundation, because it does take courage to be true to who you are, and to fight for what you believe in, and to stand up for what is right. You have to be brave. And I never wanted to scare children. I wanted them to be brave and to have the confidence to safely navigate this world. When my mother identified Samantha, her body, she said she didn't look afraid so much as she looked angry. And I said, "Well, that's my baby. She fought a man 4 times her size. She fought so hard his DNA was under her fingernails. And that did, in fact, help convict him. But I believe that if I had known then what I know now about teaching children how to protect themselves and defend themselves, that Samantha would have had a realistic shot of not getting in that car, that she might have been able to fight him off. In fact, there is a study that was done about a couple of years ago in 2010 of over 500 cases of attempted abductions. And the result was that over 85% of those children who managed to get away from an abduction did so by virtue of their own physical resistance. And the reality is, as though we want to be with our children 24/7 to protect them, we can't be. We cannot be. And the vast majority of times when a child is victimized, they are alone when that happens, and they are the only one in a position to protect themselves, to get away. So I learned the hard way that just talking to our children about being safe isn't enough. They deserve to be taught how to stop violence against them, how to get away, how to run and tell. They need to be told that no one, whether it is somebody they know, somebody they don't know, a child or an adult, somebody in their family or somebody they've never seen before, that no one has the right to hurt them. Children need to be taught instinctively and interactively. That's how they learn, is through interaction and tactile learning. And they need those lessons interactively to recognize what predatory behavior looks like, to recognize the most typical tricks and lures that predators use to groom and lure child victims. Children can be taught realistic ways to recognize, avoid, and if necessary, escape from danger. And we have a responsibility to give them that opportunity. We may not be able to prevent every tragedy, but every child deserves a fighting chance. The media called the summer of 2002 the summer of abductions. You may remember Elizabeth Smart was taken a month earlier. Danielle Van Dam's murder trial had just started. Well, I was stunned to learn that year that every year there are over 58,000 non-family related abductions. Of those, about 115 are cases like ours, where it's a complete stranger and the child is not recovered alive. The motivating factor behind the vast majority of these types of crimes is sexual abuse. Depending on the study, 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 4 to 5 girls, and 1 in 7 to 10 boys are sexually abused before their 18th birthday in this country. 1 in 6 reports of sexual assault to law enforcement involve a child under the age of 7. This is a pandemic issue that is devastating lives in every social, economic, religious, and cultural strata in this country. And yet we still struggle to gain momentum for a national movement to protect our children. A few years ago, I was in D.C., Washington, D.C., with one of our honorees, the founder of Protect, Greer Weeks. We were at a national symposium with the U.S. Attorney General about combating child exploitation. And while we were there, they had these panels with expert researchers and some of the top folks in this work. And as they're talking about child exploitation, well, first of all, it was very clear that over 1 million individual computers have been recognized as uploading known images and videos of crimes against children. They call it child pornography, but really what it is evidence of horrific assaults of young children, prepubescent children. They're crime scene photos and videos. And over 1 million individuals have been tracked uploading these things. And this panel of experts started talking about how this problem is just so massive, the best we can hope to do is triage. And Mr. Greer Weeks leans over to me and says, triage? Isn't that what they do when they declare a state of emergency? Indeed. Yes, when the best you can do is to treat the worst of the worst injuries, that's when you deploy more resources. That's when you send in more troops. But when it comes to tens of thousands of children being raped and assaulted in this country, it takes an act of Congress to get them help. Children are the #1 victims of all violent crime in the United States. And yet, if you look at the percentage of government spending, whether it be on a local, state, or federal level, frankly, it's shameful. It is pathetic. There was a Protect campaign a few years ago, and Elizabeth Smart had the best line. She said, when legislators call our children priceless, it's really just a nice way of saying we won't allocate the money necessary to protect them. I am forever grateful to Mr. Weeks for including me in Protect's lobbying efforts to pass legislation that successfully quadrupled the resources available to the Internet Crimes Against Children task forces. I have learned so much from him, and I really could go on and give a whole speech about his work, but I can't do that, and so it will have to suffice to say that there is no one more deserving than for an honor of Samantha's legacy and in honor of all child victims who have suffered similarly than Mr. Weeks. And I am so glad that you made the trip all the way across the country to be here. It really means the world to me. In 2010, the Department of Justice issued a report on children's exposure to violence. It indicated that 1 in 3 of all children surveyed were directly exposed to sexual violence. 60% of the children surveyed had actually been victims of violence. And there is one really critical truth that has to inform our approach in combating these crimes. Over 80% of all violent crime against children is perpetrated by someone the child knows and trusts. What that means is that we have to get these programs into our schools. We have to reach the children who are being victimized in their close circle of family and friends, because otherwise they will not ever be empowered. They may never know that they are not alone, that this is not okay. We have to get it to them. There was a woman, I'll never forget her, in one of my very first speeches over 10 years ago. This woman hobbled up to me. She had a hunchback that was so severe that she could barely meet my eyes when she looked up. And she told me that she had been a little girl when she was grabbed and raped and beaten and left for dead. And she survived. And she encouraged me to continue to do this work. And she said, I really wish that I had heard somebody talk to me when I was a kid, because I didn't know. I thought it was my fault. She said, I have to quote her because it's I wrote it down. She said, I have felt guilty for living for as long as I can remember. I wish I had known that I wasn't the only one. And that's the reality for so many child victims. They are so totally alone because nobody talks about these crimes. We have got to raise the proverbial rug and shine light on this evil darkness until every child knows, every parent knows that no one has the right to hurt them and that it is never, ever their fault. I have tried and tested many models over the last 10 years, and as most of you know, the Joyful Child sponsored and mentored over 100 Rad Kids instructors in Southern California. And in that process, I learned what was possible for our children. And I want to reach every single child in this country. And you just can't do that with one model. So the BRAVE programs really encapsulate everything that I wish I had taught Samantha. We teach children that they matter, that they are worthy of protection and safety. In short, we teach them why, when, and how to stand up for themselves, no matter what the situation. Our training reminds educators as to why they got into teaching in the first place and gives them tools to address some of the really difficult realities that are in their children's lives, in their students' lives. There is a story that I have to share whenever I speak, and so for those of you who have heard me, I apologize for you hearing it again. But we have new friends in the room, and I need you to know the story. There was a family about 30 years ago with 5 children, 3 older brothers and 2 little sisters, and mom and dad. And dad was a very abusive alcoholic, and he would especially beat up the boys. And one day when the oldest son was 13, he actually ran to the police station and begged them to come and help because he was afraid his dad was going to kill his little brothers. So the police report said that the boys had definitely been badly beaten. The house was disgusting. There was mold growing on the counters. But the most disturbing thing was that there was a bathroom with a door that opened onto the living room and a window. And there was a security gate on the door and on the window of this bathroom, both of which could only be opened from the outside. It was a holding cell. The children said sometimes they'd be locked in there for days if they misbehaved. So the police took all 5 children out of that house, but the family kept going back and begging, pleading to get their children back. They promised to get therapy. They cleaned up the house. Within a week, all 5 children were returned to that house. And there was never a subsequent visit. And in all of the years that those children were growing up, going to school with bruises, broken bones, increasing violence amongst themselves and towards others, no one in their family, no one in their school, No one in their neighborhood. No one ever reported that they might be in danger of abuse. And the youngest son in that family grew up and murdered my daughter. Nothing could ever excuse the horror that he perpetrated. But the reality is that this is a cycle. And this cycle is not going to end until we make children our highest priority. We have known for a very long time that children who are victims of violence are 8 times more likely to end up in jail themselves. A 30-year health study by the Center for Disease Control in Kaiser made it clear that there is a direct link between childhood trauma and significant heart disease, post-traumatic stress, autoimmune disorders, symptoms that are not unlike what we see our veterans coming back from war with. These children are at a higher risk for drug and alcohol abuse, suicide, and a whole range of self-destructive behaviors. The work of Dr. Bruce Perry and others show that all forms of abuse, from neglect to physical to sexual to even domestic partner abuse, has a detrimental impact on the development of a child's brain. Of course, defense attorneys try to use these realities to get these people smaller sentences, shorter sentences, but it is our nation's utter failing to hold people accountable for crimes against children that has fueled the cycle of violence against them. The instant a child is victimized and is not believed, when no one advocates for their safety, that child loses a sense of their own humanity and their belief in the humanity of others. And ultimately, too often, that cycle perpetuates. Gandhi once said that if we're to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we have to begin with our children. Children may only be 30% of our population, but they are 100% of our future. And I want that future to be a place where children can play outside safely and joyfully. I want a future where children are not seen as our possessions or our playthings, but as unique individuals who have the capacity to make this world a safer place. At our last awards, I told you that I wanted to take you on a tour of what it looks like to unite a community in child protection. Well, although I'm getting better with taking pictures, and hopefully you all saw some when you were coming in, with a staff of 2, it's really hard. So, what I would like to do is acknowledge the people who are in this room who are working to create a safer world for our children. So if you are a brave teacher or a Rad Kids instructor, would you please stand and let us applaud you? And please keep standing. Melanie, stay standing. If you are an ambassador and deliver prevention education to our parents and educators, please stand if you are a Joyful Child Foundation ambassador. We have trained over 100 of you, and you all are truly our capacity. You are the reason that we can reach so many thousands of children, is because of the work that you do every day. And I cannot thank you enough for making it possible to bring this vision to reality. But there's more. If you are a parent who believes that every child should be empowered, stand up, please. If you are a law enforcement officer dedicated to making this world a safer place for children, please stand up. And if you want to join us in the fight to stop crimes against children, join us and stand. You are why we can celebrate, because our children are not alone. No, we are a community united in the protection and wonderment of every child, and together we can stop predatory crimes against children. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being brave. Thank you. It is now my distinct pleasure and honor to invite Miss Chloe Carr to the stage, accompanied by Ashley Haney on keyboard, Trey Lockerbie on guitar, and Ryan Smith on drums. Together, friends, we will raise our children higher and higher until not one more child is victimized. Thank you for celebrating.